You guys so much for joining us today. My name is Jonathan. I'm the president of iFlow Creative, and I've put this webinar together to help you guys improve your writing style and become better authors. One of the biggest things that I find that I'm battling here when I'm talking to authors and helping them with their books is number one, when they give me their books, they kind of sort of think they have potential, but they don't really. And number two, they go all the way down the line and publish, and the book isn't ready for publication yet because there's a lot of steps that they're skipping along the way. And so today we're going to be talking about how to do these steps the right way. And I'm going to give you some extra tools and tips and techniques to get your books going the right way and make sure that you're writing a great book that your readers are going to love. All right. So, first question I hear most often is it really possible for me to write a book that readers love? Those of you who are here, you're probably in some writers groups here on Facebook or wherever, Goodreads, wherever, and you hear people say things like, "You're not a real author unless you publish with a big publisher," or "You just self-published, so anybody can do that." Or you hear people who have self-published and they never get any reviews or they never get really any sales or anything like that. And that's kind of discouraging, right? Like, why would you, if they can't do it, what makes you think that you can do it? Because they published, they went through the steps and published, and they still aren't getting any sales. And you hear this over and over and over again. The answer to this is yes. And I'm going to tell you exactly how I found this out and how I can deliver this to you, okay? So, first thing is first, I am an author myself. Now, this was my very first book. It's called Reborn. And if you look, you see that the paperback has a line through it because it's no longer on the market. This was my very first book that I published back in 2012. And I worked so hard on that book. This book took me 7 years to write, of editing and going back over it and again and again and again, giving it to an editor. She got it back to me, 432 pages. And look at that. 2-star reviews, 2.5-star reviews, 2 ratings, hardly any sales. The publisher made more money on my book than I did. And that was how that went. Now, I'm going to show you something. It's a little embarrassing, but this was the very first review that I got on my book. 2 stars, and it really just kills my book and my story. And you know this was probably the most discouraging review I've ever received. This person took the time to even send me an email about how bad they thought my book was. They were as honest as they felt they needed to be. So now I could have done one of two things. I could have taken this review and given up and said, you know what, I'm never going to be a writer, or take this, learn from it, and do better the next time. So I decided to take it and learn from it because writing is a passion of mine. It's always been a passion of mine. My life was saved by an author, among other people, but I was heading down a dark path if not for an author. So I knew the power of writing. And if I could just get this right, if I could just create something that readers can't put down, or at least the next 3 reviews that I got weren't reviews like this, I felt like I would have stumbled onto something. So I spent the next few years studying what made readers and even people who go to movies and television shows watch those shows. At that time, I believe Scandal was the big TV show, and I forget which book was popular. Maybe Twilight was popular back then. But Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, shows like that, I would sit down and I would study those shows. Not necessarily for the content. I mean, the content was great anyway. I mean, had a couple of my favorite actresses in it, but really for what made me want to sit down and keep watching and binge it. What made it binge worthy, or what made it a page turner? And so I studied for 3 years. I got back to work and I wrote my next book. Now, this one is called The Narrow Three. It is available on Amazon. And 3 years later, about a fourth of the size of the book, and look at those reviews. It went bestseller overnight when I published it. And I even did a new promotion here 2 weekends ago, and I'm going to show you the results from that later on in the webinar. But these were some of the reviews that I got from that book. Big difference, right? One is a 2 star saying how horrible it is. And here we go. So I stumbled onto something, and it was a couple of things that I just needed to tweak when it comes to how I delivered my book that made the book something that readers wanted to keep reading. And as we go through, I'm going to give you those things and a couple of tools that you can take away today to improve your writing drastically, to create that page turner, to get reviews like this. Look at that. It says she was so lost in the story, she burned her dinner. Isn't that our goal as writers? We want to engross them into, I mean, obviously I don't want to burn this lady's house down. And I did send her a gift card for burning her dinner so that she could get some dinner. But like, how wonderful would that be for you if you got a review like this? I was so lost, I burned my dinner. I couldn't put it down. Things like that. Don't we want that for our stories? Yeah. Go ahead and type in the chat. Yeah, if this is what you want for your book, if you want reviews like this and people to be so engrossed in your story that this is what they're seeing. Yeah. Okay, good. Yep, exactly. Exactly. Yep. It's a dream. Good, good. All right. So, to answer the question, is it really possible for me to write a book readers love? Yes. If I can do it, you can do it. Trust me on that. If I can do it, you can do it. I was just a normal dude who wanted to be an author. Now I help best-selling authors write books. We've had 4, 5, or 6 bestsellers in the last year. We've got 3 more people finishing, a couple more who've been on the news. Like, you're going to meet all of those people. But the answer is yes. I am not somebody who was a prodigy, who was born into it. I had to work for it. So if I can do it and make it happen, you can absolutely do it and make it happen. Okay, so here's what's on the docket list today, okay? Now, these are the elements that I have found to be the most impactful when it comes to writing a page-turning book, a book that your readers get so lost in that they can't put it down. They burn their dinner, they stay up late into the night, they lose hours of sleep. These are a couple of the elements, okay? Number 1 is the narrative hook. Narrative hooks are critical to your success, all right? Number 2, if you've ever heard somebody say, I can't hear your voice, or you need to work on your voice, I'm going to show you how to find your voice, okay? Number 3, how to create realistic dialogue and why that's so critical. Number 4, how to put your readers into your book. This is pretty important because if the reader doesn't feel like they're in your story, they're not going to care. And how to keep your readers reading. So that's what's on the docket list today. I'm going to give you these tools, how I found them, and help you with using them for your writing. All right. So number 1, this is the biggest thing that you need to understand. Okay. I know that a lot of people will tell you that it's the cover, will tell you that it's your promotion. I don't care how good your cover is. I don't care how amazing your promotion is. If your book is shit, pardon my French, that's what kind of writing career you're going to have. So your book quality is the key to a successful writing career. You have to increase the quality of your writing. Your writing will speak for itself eventually. If you don't, well, okay. So there is an outlier like 50 Shades. All right. I've tried to read a book, but that's a supreme outlier. For everybody else, this is key. All right. Your book quality is the key to a successful writing career. It's not the cover, not the promotion, whatever else. You could have a crappy cover, and for those people who will read your book, if the quality is there, you're going to get the result that you want. It might not be as fast as somebody with a great cover. I'm not saying that covers and promotions are not important, but it's not as important as the quality of your writing. All right. So number 1, let's talk about narrative hooks. So some of you who don't know what that is, it's a literary technique in the opening of a story that hooks the reader's attention so that they will keep on reading. This is critical. Critical. All right. Here's a statistic. 84% of your readers, if they are not hooked in that first page, let me scratch that. In that first paragraph, if they are not hooked by that first paragraph, 84% of your readers will not finish your book. I don't care if they're your mother. I don't care. It doesn't say 84% of readers who don't know you. 84% of your readers will not finish your book. That's critical information. Critical information. All right. So let's talk about some narrative hooks here. Now, these are some of the authors that I've been working with. They were kind enough to allow me to share little excerpts of their stories so that I can help you guys with this technique. So here's a paragraph. I'm just going to read a couple of sentences. We'll read the whole paragraph. So this is the first chapter, the first paragraph of her book. Kayla leaned her head back on the leather headrest of her parents' car, staring out at the clear night. Now, this first sentence is really the sharp end of that hook. Okay, if you don't get their attention by here, they'll probably read a couple more, and then they're gone. So as they rounded a curve on the road, her parents showered her with praise. You kind of see what's going on here. She's a softball player, and they played in a tough game. Okay, it's not a horrible hook, but it could be a little bit better. So we took that book, and through the reading, I found a better hook for her readers. So this is what we changed that to. So now this is the first paragraph. A stay-at-home order has been issued for the city, and gates are being locked as I speak. News reporter interrupted the evening program, sweat beading up his forehead and eyes wild. We've locked the studio doors, and all businesses are closed immediately. Okay, are to close immediately. Sorry. All right. Now, do you see the difference here? This is the middle of a conflict, and the reader is like, oh crap, what is going on? Why is the city closing? This is probably more relevant now than from before 2020 because everybody went through this. This is something that connects a lot of people. Do you see the difference in the hook? One is, hey, Kayla, you did such a great job on your softball team. Somebody who hasn't played a sport probably wouldn't connect with that. But something like this, at the very least, if they can't connect to it, they're going to want to know why businesses are closing and this reporter is freaking out. Does that make sense? You guys understand? Is that making sense? Okay, good. Good, good. All right, so let's take a look at another one. Okay, now I'm not going to read this one. It is a little bit long, but it opens up in the middle of a conflict. That is number one when it comes to a narrative hook. You want to open up in the middle of something that is happening, like something that gets somebody's attention, a fight, an argument, uh, a blood scene, an emergency situation, something like that. That hooks somebody's attention. That gets them reading. Does everybody understand? Are you understanding what I'm saying here? Okay, good. Yeah, type in the chat if you're understanding so that I'm making sure I'm not confusing you guys or going over something that you're not understanding. Okay, good. And I believe there's one more here. Okay, yeah. Now the author wanted me to white out or black out in this case the name of the character, but here's another one where it's kind of introducing something that is a little bit strange. Now this character is able to hear past what a normal human being can hear, and she kind of explains that. That is a little bit strange. That will at least spark some curiosity within the reader, so that they have to keep reading and understand either how it is that this character can do that. Why is she a superhero? Is she a laboratory experiment? Things like that. Does that make sense? It sparks curiosity or gets their attention. Those are the best narrative hooks. So here's another example. Let's just say it's a romance, and the narrative hook, the first line in that sentence is, "Wait, what did he say?" That hooks somebody's attention. If you're into the romance, you obviously this guy said something wrong. The girls want to know what he said, or the guys want to know what he said. They keep reading. Does that make sense? That's in essence what a narrative hook is. It does not have to be so long. It just has to hook their attention. If you hook their attention in that first sentence, it's a great narrative hook. If you hook their attention in that first paragraph, it's a great narrative hook. But if you don't, 84% are gone. So I want you to understand exactly how important this concept is with this narrative hook. All right. And I believe, yeah. So just to reiterate, 84% of readers will never finish the book if the hook isn't right. Never finish the book. So now you understand when we go to those writers groups and people say, I don't have any reviews, I don't have any sales, can somebody help me? This is probably the reason why, is that narrative hook is not right, or the quality of the book is not there. They probably published without going through the editing steps. Maybe they paid an editor, but that's not the editing steps that's necessary to have a quality book. Editing cannot be done in just one run. That's not a part of this webinar. I'm just giving you that because this is a secret that I found because I made that mistake. You saw the results of that mistake that I made with Reborn. 2 reviews. The publisher made more money and it's now off the market. The other time when I went through multiple times and had multiple runs, you see the results. And I'm going to show you some more results from that book later on. But now this right here, you understand why most writers don't make it. 84%. So you're limiting yourself to 16% of readers who will push through the book, probably your wife, your spouse, your brother who always believed it. That one person. You can't make a career out of that. So this is so, so important. All right. Okay. Now, how to find your voice. This is probably one of the simplest techniques that I can teach you. Uh, and it really, I'm kind of surprised that a lot of writers don't understand this. A lot of writers do understand this, they just don't do it for some reason. But this is a really simple technique to help you find your voice. Okay? Read your manuscript, your chapter, your paragraph, whatever you're stuck on, out loud to yourself. If you stumble or you get tongue tied, make some changes until you don't stumble anymore. It's one of the simplest techniques I can teach you because this is the make or break of finding your voice. If you don't know how it sounds, literally, how it sounds out loud, and if you don't feel comfortable speaking like that out loud, obviously it's not in your voice. You ever tried to read out loud something that somebody else wrote and they weren't jiving with you? You get tongue tied, you stumble around, things like that. Yeah. So this is something that will help you with finding your voice. If it doesn't sound right to you when you read it out loud, you need to make a change. Does that make sense? It's coming easier. I know this is, oh, I knew that. These are things that some of these things are going to be things that you've probably already heard, but I'm telling you, I've made the mistake. I made the 7-year mistake and did not do this. Every time I do this, every time I work with this with our authors, who, whether they have us ghostwrite or edit or help them with their writing, whatever, we use these techniques and it always improves their writing. And I will show you some results of that. But this is a big one. How to find your voice, read your manuscript or whatever section out loud. If you stumble or get tongue tied, make some changes until you don't, till it sounds natural to you. Make sense? All right, good. Let's move on. Okay, now this is something that is pretty important. Mostly this is for fiction writers. For poets and things like that, you're probably going to want to read it out loud to find your voice, to make sure you're communicating your poems or your piece to your readers the way that you need to. But when it comes to dialogue and romance or paranormal romance or fantasy, science fiction, whatever, you need to make your dialogue real. And the reason being is because your dialogue is the vehicle for your readers to understand your characters. Besides, I mean, your narration is as well. But if they don't feel like the dialogue is realistic, they're not going to care about the characters. Have you ever tried to talk to somebody and they're using words that you don't understand? Do you want to talk to them often? It almost seems like they're talking down to you all the time, right? Like you want somebody who's kind of on your level, who uses words that you understand, who connects with you, who understands what you're going through and can communicate and duplicate what you're saying. The same thing for your readers. Okay. So if you are writing a fantasy, you don't want to use modern terms like I ain't gonna, you know, ain't nobody got time for that. It's not something you would use in an epic fantasy because that's not how they spoke back then. Now, obviously, there's going to be some words that, cross centuries or however we want to say that, but you want to keep the dialogue a little bit more. You don't want to go too formal, quote unquote, so to speak, but a little more formal than the language that we use today in 2021. Does that make sense? Go ahead and type it in the chat if it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, good. So if it's a modern dialogue, you want to use modern terms. If it's a little bit in the 70s or in the 1400s, you want to start researching how they spoke back then to make it more modern to that time. Now, if you're making up a world, you're kind of in freestyle mode. You make the rules, obviously, in that situation. but you want to stay true to those rules. You want to write down those rules and stay true to those rules. You can't have formal in one spot from one character and then informal, same character, different spot in the book, same time period. That kind of throws your reader into confusion. Does that make sense? All right, good. So again, read your dialogue out loud. If you stumble or get tongue tied, make changes. Same thing with finding your voice, right? Well, why is that? Because dialogue is a character's voice. Now, the difference is when you're finding your voice in your narrations, you're really going to stick to one style. With dialogue, your characters can have various different styles because not everybody talks the same. So, somebody who's a dwarf and they're not as fluent in English as somebody who's a dragon. I'm just throwing characters out there. Maybe the dragons speak more formal and use bigger words than a dwarf would. But you want to make sure that you're not getting tongue tied when you're speaking as the dwarf out loud. If you do, make changes until it's natural because somebody who's speaking and has been speaking for a long time won't really get tongue tied often. Does that make sense? Okay, good, good. So make sure that you're reading your work out loud for each character. Now, this is where character logs and character templates come in handy. And I'm going to show you a way to get character templates because I read so many books where the characters don't seem real. They have a couple of elements to their character, but it's not really tied together. There's no background. There's no manner of speaking. There's no connection with how they grew up versus how they act now. Like some people have characters who were abused as a young child, and now they're this outgoing, fiery, trusting everybody type of character, and it doesn't really make sense because somebody who's abused wouldn't trust a lot of people growing up. If that's how they live their life as a kid without some drastic change and showing that they can trust people, they wouldn't really be an extrovert, things like that. This is where character references come in handy because that person's dialogue is probably going to be short, to the point, not opening up, get what they need and leave before somebody can hurt me. Does that make sense? So, yeah, we want to make sure that we're keeping the dialogue real to those characters. A fiery character is going to be fiery throughout their life, without unless there's some growth or change, things like that. So, I hope that does that make sense. Go ahead and type it in the chat. I just want to make sure you guys aren't confused and that I'm keeping you rolling here. Okay, now I found this out by my dialogue because I wrote a fantasy, and then the Narrow Three was a mystery. Excuse me. Grab a drink of water here. The Narrow Three was a mystery. The dialogue in my fantasy didn't really connect with the readers. I never read it out loud. But with the Narrow Three, I read all of my dialogue out loud, the whole book out loud, multiple times, each time I went over it. When I got tongue tied, I would make a change. And you saw those results. So we're gonna move on here, but I hope that makes sense to you guys. And if not, just go ahead and type a question in the chat and I will try and answer it here as we get towards the end of this webinar. Okay, now here's an example of the dialogue. So we've got two characters here talking. This is from the Narrow Three. One of them is the detective. He's talking about the person that he's chasing. The other is the captain. They're talking back and forth, but you're putting the reader there as if you can hear them talking back and forth. Okay, does that make sense? All right, good. All right, so how to paint the perfect scenes. Now, this is where you get your readers so involved in their story or in your story that they lose sleep, they burn their dinner, they completely lose track of where they are, and they become engrossed in what you're doing. All right? So, this was a little trick that I learned through my mistakes and my studies is to only describe up to 3 sensory details and allow the reader to fill in the rest in their minds. Now, this does 2 things. Number one, you're allowing the reader to have their own authentic experience because not every reader is going to experience the same things in their lives. Some readers never leave a certain city, so they don't know what it's like outside of that city. So they're going to just put in things based on what they have experienced. Some readers have been everywhere. And so when you describe those things, they're easily going to be able to put themselves into the scene. What you don't want to do is kind of tell the reader how to read. You want them to read it themselves. You want them to get out of it what they will themselves and give them an authentic read. Okay, so here's a paragraph that really talks about that really paints a scene well. And if you notice, there is not many sensory details. He's really describing his affiliation with the town and the or with the city and the police. So I'm not going to go ahead and read all of it. We really don't have time for me to do all of that. But if you look and you read, you're seeing the reader, or I'm sorry, the author is not telling so many details. Rich town, plenty of mansions, Bentleys, and golf courses. He's not saying things like the town is quiet, everybody has there's a nice downtown with music and all that stuff. The reader doesn't need to know all that. Just paint the scene. They can kind of, if they've watched the television show or been to a nice affluent area, they know what it's all about. Lots of golf courses. It's not loud. There's not a lot of parties and things happening, or at least not in the daytime. And then it goes into the scene. Cut and dry homicide, except for there was no evidence, no exit wound, no, things that you would normally get in a murder scene, excuse me. Things that you would normally get in a murder scene weren't there, building conflict, keeping the reader reading. Does that make sense? All right, good. Let me know if I'm going over something that you guys want some clarification on, and I'll have no problem answering that here. Okay, now here's another one. Now this is talking about kind of adding on to that uh, news reporter narrative hook, where she's describing now the scene that she's seeing on television. Now, if you notice, she just says a tiger prowling the street, chasing bystanders. There's not really any mention of any screaming or people running or things like that. Okay, this is where the reader puts in their own experience. Almost everybody has watched a news report where people are running and freaking out or something. Almost everybody. Okay, this is how to paint the scene. The reader's going to put the rest in their minds and keep it authentic to them. That's how they do that. All right. Now, how to keep your readers. This is so important. Besides that narrative hook, you have to keep your readers reading your book. You can't just give them a narrative hook and then the rest of the book is crappy. This is why everything that I've taught you here so far kind of builds on the next thing. So we talked about the narrative hook, then we talked about your voice, then we talked about your dialogue, and then we talked about painting the scene. Now we're talking about how to keep them so you're building on, got them hooked, uh, found the voice, dialogue is realistic. Now we got to keep them going in the story. Okay. So if you're writing a chapter book, when you end your chapters, this is how you keep them transitioning to the next chapter and staying up at night. You end your chapters in the middle of conflict, of a fight, an argument, decision making moment, etc. Because if you end your chapter where everybody goes to bed, the reader can put the book away. They kind of have some closure, okay? They put the book away, put it on the nightstand. This is a good spot to end. If you end in the middle of a conflict, they can't put the book down because they have to know what's happening next. So this is how you keep your readers. All right. So here is an example of how to end a chapter and transition into the next one. Excuse me. So if you take a moment to read this, the character is talking about his situation and how he's hunting for somebody. He's admitting that the girl that he's hunting is good, and then he's admitting that he is good as well. This kind of transitions into the next chapter because it's building up to some epic conflict at the end of the book where the main character finds or doesn't find this person. And the reader has to know, okay, what's happening next. Or a reader who's interested will want to know what's happening next and keep them reading. Does that make sense? All right, good. I want to make sure that you guys are getting this. So please let me know if there's something that I go over that does not make sense. Okay. So we talked about how to hook your readers. We talked about how to keep your voice flowing so that they're following along with you. We talked about dialogue. We talked about what was the last thing we just went over? We talked about keeping your readers reading and how to end chapters. Now I want to talk about the number one thing that stops writers' careers. You've probably heard of this. Can anybody guess? Type it in the chat. Anybody guess? No? Okay, life. Okay. Yes, yes, life. Yep, there it is. Yep, who said that? Yep, good. Writer's block. Writer's block is a phenomenon experienced by writers that is best described as an overwhelming feeling of being stuck in the writing process without the ability to move forward and write anything new. The number one career killer for writers. Now, I know that some of you feel like this is a part of the process, and in a way it is. It's really defined as something else, but in a way, yes, it is a part of the process because you can't get writer's block if you don't write, right? Well, this is really an artistic thing because a lot of artists deal with their own version of writer's block. We This is just what we've called it for our field. So as a musician, my muse is gone. For an artist, the canvas isn't talking to me. For a sculptor, I'm not seeing the sculpt or the statue in the marble or whatever it is. So all artists and creative people deal with their own version of writer's block. Now, here's the thing about it. There is a cure for writer's block. There is a cure for writer's block. And in our program, the WIP Completion Initiative, I have created 2 videos to help you with writer's block because there's multiple things that stack on top of you that stop writer's block or writers from finishing up their stories. Okay? Couple of things. Number one, maybe you're dealing with somebody who's invalidating you. Your grandma who's telling you, oh, you're never going to finish that book. Your mom, your spouse who's telling you, don't waste your time. You should get a real job, things like that. Even though some people do disregard those things do stack on top of you, especially if it's somebody that you respect. So, how do you knock that out? Well, the video describes that. Another thing is maybe you've been staring at the computer too long. For those of you who don't have anybody invalidating you, you're going, 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 and then all of a sudden you hit a rut. The characters don't talk to you anymore. You're not having the dreams, blah, 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 whatever it is. No invalidation, but you just hit a rut and you can't seem to get over it. Yes, that can be overcome as well. And in the video, in this program, the WIP Completion Initiative, there's 2 videos that will describe how to overcome both of those so that you never have to worry about writer's block again. But it is the number one career killer. And if you don't stop this, if you don't overcome this, I don't care how lofty your dreams are, you will never finish a book. So it's really important for you to knock this part out of your career. All right. Okay. Now let me talk about a couple of our authors here. All right. This is Tyler Edwards. His book, The Outlands, came out early last year. Look at these reviews that he got. Now, this is somebody who had been stuck for a year and a half, 2 years, for 2 years when I got a hold of him. If I remember correctly, I think his wife bought or wanted us to edit his book in like Christmas for two years ago or something like that. And then he got stuck. And I kept nudging him, nudging him, nudging him. And he finally published. And these are the reviews that he got after we used these principles to edit his book. We used these principles to give him some suggestions, and he made the changes. We did the cover. These are the reviews that he got. Okay? So these things do work. For those of you who are still on the fence and you think, well, that works for you, JK, and maybe those other authors, I'm going to show you a couple here. And this next one coming up, this is one that I want you guys to pay attention to. But this does work. If you apply the right principles and do things the correct way, and don't just willy-nilly and try to cut corners and all that stuff. If you do it the right way and you apply these things that I'm telling you about, it will work. You will have reviews like this. Okay? And here's what he said about his experience with us. Okay. Now this one is probably my prized work, one of my prized possessions, so to speak, or one of my prized works. This is Jim Toner. You see the date there. That is not even 3 years ago. He had sent a book, and I was straight up with him about the quality of the book. And this was the review that he posted on the website or on the Facebook page. Okay. So I reached out to him and I talked with him about what his goals were, what he wanted to do, and how we could make a change. Okay. Fast forward, this is his book, and he had us ghostwrite it for him. So we use the principles that we have here. This is his book. This is from April of this year. Look at that review. So he went from, I will work on something else. This is the same story, Summer Danger. I will work on something else. We pushed him through it. We got him through it. We ghostwrited the book using these principles that I taught you. And look at that review. This, I'm telling you, you guys, if you just apply the principles the right way, it will work for you. You will have readers raving about your book. Okay? All right. Now, you remember those results that I talked about earlier in the webinar? I wrote the Narrow 3 almost 7 years ago. Oh, I'm sorry, 6 years ago. It's 2021 now. Okay? I did this. This is from this year, 2021. I ran this promotion in early April over a weekend. Look at those results. 731 Kindle downloads and 3 paperbacks ordered from one weekend, 9, 10, 11, and that was the promotion. And it trickled up from look at that. I mean, the results are right there. The results are right there. If you do this, this could be you. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Amanda Fasciano is another author. She went from no confidence, not even realizing she could do this, having a dream, obviously, but she didn't think she could. In 2 years, 2 novels. She's been appearing at the country's best regarded horror conventions. She's got, I think the series is finished by now. It's called Life After. And she's gotten a writing career off the ground. So if you don't think that you can do this, I just gave you the blueprint. I'm just showing you the results from people who have been on the news, who've been invited to conventions, who have turned their stories around, have raving readers, all of that jazz. You can have all of that jazz. All right? All right. So I want to talk about this program that I've been hinting at since the beginning of the webinar. It's called the Work in Progress Completion Initiative. That's what WIP stands for, Work in Progress or Writing in Progress. All right? So here is what it includes, and this is why it is so instrumental in getting your writing career off of the ground. Number one, you're going to have a video course and podcasts delivered by me about writing. These are things like the remedies for writer's block, character development templates that you can use to create complete characters right now, how to craft a story, the elements of a story, the essential writing pilot to help you with some editing techniques and things like that, when to use a comma, when to use a semicolon, why you can't use a comma and a semicolon in the same sentence sometimes, things like that. It's all included in this video course. It's a $550 value. You're also going to get one-on-one mentoring with me. Now, there's 2 different packages here on the mentoring side. Okay. Now you're looking. I know some of you are looking at that value and going, "Well, where does he get that from?" Writing mentors can cost up to $300 an hour, and the average time to write a book is 120 hours. So you do the math. About 5 months. You do the math. $300 an hour times 120, and there you go. So you're going to meet with one of our best-selling mentors. Excuse me. And we're going to go based on your schedule. Okay. This is all I need from you on a weekly basis. If you can find an hour and a half a week, not even all of it for me. I just want 30 minutes. I want 30 minutes to go over some things with you, 30, 45 minutes to go over some things with you. The other half, you can spend writing. If you can give me that and you listen and you apply what I'm telling you, you can finish a book. Sometimes less than 5 months, depending on how long you want the book to be. That's all I need. So do you think in your life you can find an hour and a half to write the best book that you've ever written and have people raving about your story? Do you think you can find an hour and a half if it means that you could have readers raving about your story? Think you can do that? Yeah, okay. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And you got to commit. You got to commit. This isn't going to happen by itself, but if you can give me an hour and a half, I will commit my time for you and we will get you writing the best book you have ever written. All right? Now, the end result of this is a finished manuscript ready for editing. I cannot stress this enough. I've gone to so many writing groups where somebody says, I just finished my manuscript and I'm going to send it off to an editor. And as soon as I do, as soon as they say that, I drop my hands or drop my head in my hands and I shake my head because they are tripling their editing costs. The manuscript, just because you type the end, does not mean it's ready for editing. This program will get it ready for editing, where you are not going to have to end up spending $5,000 to get a book edited that should not cost that much. If you do things the right way, you will have a finished manuscript ready for editing. On top of that, if you decide to use one of our best-selling editors, instead of getting a 15% discount, which is what most of our other authors, our other repeat authors get, you're going to get double that. You're going to get a 30% discount for editing and a free proofread. It's a $2,100 value, probably more depending on how big your story is. Okay. So that is the end result of this, a finished manuscript ready for editing, ready for the next phase, almost ready to be published and ready for your readers. So just to recap, this is what you're getting. You're getting the WHIP video course, podcast, character development templates, remedies for writer's block, and more. You're getting one-on-one mentoring with a best-selling writing coach, and you're getting a bonus 30% discount on editing and a free proofread. It's an $86.50 value. Now, obviously, I'm not going to charge you $86.50. I mean, who can afford to do that, especially with COVID times right now? Okay. But I want to ask you something. Can I ask you a question really quick? If all this program did was give you results like this, would it be worth it to you? If all it did was get you readers who are raving about it, who are telling you that the next story, count them in on the next story, who are saying that it blew them away, they burned their dinner. If all it did was help you get to be invited to conventions to speak, or get on the news talking about your book like Tyler, or even let's just say that this 734, let's just say you did half of that and you charged a $1.99, $2. You sold 10 paperbacks instead of my three, but you do the math. If all it did was that and allow you to not only be able to support your writing, have readers who loved what you produced, and change somebody's life. Maybe a reader needs your book. Would it be worth the $8,600? I think so. I think it would be worth that because I know the power of writing. I know how powerful this written word can be. This is how you create change in the world. This is how you make billion-dollar industries like the film industry. All of that, every single Iron Man, every single 50 Shades, it all started with you where you are right now. And I'm not saying that you're going to get $8 billion, but you can get 700. You can get these kind of reviews. You can start your career off on the right foot and be able to keep writing and support your families. If it just changed your life like that, would it be worth $8,600? Would you invest $8,600 if you could get results like this? Now, obviously, I'm not going to ask you to spend $8,600 with us today. Actually, there's a new special that we're running. If you scroll down, you're going to be able to try this program absolutely free. You're going to have access to everything as if you were a part of the program. You can download the Author's Essential Writing Pilot. You can check out the How to Knock Off Writer's Block Part 1 and 2 for those of you who are stuck or you're worried about getting stuck. You're going to have access to a one-on-one chapter analysis with one of our mentors. It is going to be just like you are a part of the program for free. If you don't like the program, no strings attached, we don't charge you anything, no problem. You just say, I don't like it, I don't see the value in it, and you move on. If you do like it, now you know what it's going to be like going in. So you're going to know exactly what to expect from us. You're going to be able to work with us one-on-one, and your book is going to be created in record time because that's just what we do here. So scroll down, check out the Work in Progress Completion Initiative. You're going to see a little button that says Sign Up Now, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you learned a ton. This webinar will be available on inside that program that you're going to have free access to for a week. So if you want to rewatch this video, just go ahead and click the Try It Now button, and you're going to have access to that on the other side. I'll be checking out the chat box to answer some questions. Other than that, thank you guys so much for joining us. Once again, my name is Jonathan. You can call me JK with iFlow Creative. And as always, keep writing and never give up. See you next time.